What's good, everyone? Welcome in to this edition of the Views from the 573 podcast. Hope you guys are doing well as we are near this year's NFL up in Green Bay. Exciting time as always. We love the draft here on this show, and we always do something every year, a mock of sorts, talking about some of the big picture questions here. And as always, I'm joined by Matt Mormann to do this little exercise. Matt, how are you doing?
Oh my goodness, Ryan. I am doing so good. NFL draft a couple weeks away, WrestleMania a week away. Right now, Ryan. Right now as we sit here recording this, a week from this moment, I will be sitting in Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas watching WrestleMania Night 1 live in person. Me and Rebecca, we fly out on Tuesday. It's our honeymoon. Um Unbelievably excited. Yeah, just brimming with excitement on WrestleMania this year. And I know some people are poo-pooing the excitement of it. I refuse to listen to that kind of noise. But we're not here for that though. We're here for something almost as dramatic as WrestleMania. We're here for the NFL draft. Or yeah, it's in Green Bay. That's cool. I really love the traveling draft. They started probably almost 10 years ago now,
Yeah.
right? It's been a little while now since I moved out of Radio City Music Hall. And obviously I got to go to it a couple years ago, and it was in Kansas City. Very happy for the lovely people of Green Bay. I imagine my friend Tanner will most likely be up there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've really enjoyed this kind of like getting to go to all these different venues and just see the crowd just pop in and really kind of show like the big crowds that they have turned up. They hear these guys' names being announced. It's just that it's not a game. It's just these guys getting announced by Goodell as he's getting booed, and as you find out your pick, you got select fans from different teams who may be like, okay, who did we just pick? And maybe booing themselves. But yeah,
They really make it like a football convention of sorts.
they really do.
If you've got a chance to go to a draft, I recommend it a lot. It was free to go in Kansas City. I imagine it probably still is. And they have, exhibits and displays and games and all this kind of stuff you can do too. And then obviously the draft itself. And it brings in all these fans from all over the place. You have all 32 teams represented in one place. It's a lot of fun. It is really, really cool. It is. It's like an NFL convention. Ryan, quick question for you, off the
Yeah.
cuff here. What do you think would have been like historically one of the most fun like location pick combinations, right? Like if we could have had the draft be
Hmm.
in a certain city for a certain draft, like off the top of my head, just this year being Green Bay when you mentioned that, could you imagine if the Green Bay draft was the Jordan Love draft, right? Where it's like then you're gonna you know what I mean? Like that kind of a thing happening at the home base there with the home fans, like oh my goodness, that would have just been like mind melting, So I don't know if you got any others off the top of your head of ones from the history here that would have been really really cool to have had in their location.
No, that one would have been that one would have been a fun one. Oh man, I think there would have been a more it would have been a more fun reaction than what we had when we did our live stream and just seeing
Yeah, that's
just
right.
seeing what the Green Bay fans like. Wait, we took a quarterback. We traded up to take a quarterback, and we still have Aaron Rodgers. Just
Because
to
that
see the
was
collective confusion on their
right.
faces.
Because that was COVID, and so you're right. We did the live stream of it. I'm trying to also think if there's been any more like day of draft massive trade ups that would like qualify think of like when the Titans trade the
Oh,
picks, when the Rams moved out for the Redskins to go get RG3, but those were ahead of time, which we haven't had any of those this year. I'm trying to think if there's been any like day of. I know when Atlanta went up and got Julio, they went up pretty far
boo,
in
yeah.
that draft. That would have been really cool to have like been in Atlanta for. But yeah, no, just a thought experiment there of kind of what some cool ones would have been.
I'll tell you a more recent one. If it was at Houston and they did the trade up and got back up to three, and they took taking Stroud and then taking Will Anderson, I think that being in Houston, we're like, whoa, we're trading back up. We're trading back up to three.
And one thing that's crazy, when you're there live, because that was the draft. I was in Kansas City. I was there. There was so much confusion because Ryan, if you remember, CJ Stroud walked across that stage and he didn't look thrilled, right?
Yeah.
Like, he did not look like he was having a good time at that draft, even though he just went second overall. It was, and so when you're there live, you don't have the commentary playing, you don't have the insiders talking, and you're not in your phone, because you're not a loser, right? It's like you're paying attention to the world around you here, and
Right.
so all of a sudden you just see like all the graphics, they have like the lights and the graphics, the team colors and stuff, and all of a sudden it changes from Arizona back to Houston, and my instant reaction was, oh my goodness, they just traded Stroud and they're gonna draft Anthony Richardson. Like that was like, because you're in a live event scenario here where you're reacting to just lights changing colors. And so like that was the like only thing. And you're waiting. I mean, gosh, you wait like 10 minutes between picks, right? So like you have
Yeah.
all this time to like build up in your head, and you don't have like the draft ticker, right? So you don't get like, oh well, these are the picks that were traded. No, you just get, now the Titans are on the clock. You have no idea how, you have no idea why. And so I remember my thought was, oh my goodness, they just traded away CJ Stroud immediately after drafting him to now pick again, and they're going to take Anthony Richardson, um, which would have been absolutely mental, right? Which
Yeah.
actually, that brings me to another question I have for you, and I'm going to steal this one. This is a question I heard from the 101 ESPN St. Louis this week. I was listening to one of their episodes while driving for work this week, and they had a question, but from a kind of like philosophical standpoint. Would you rather see your team take a lot of the like highly volatile players, or take the safer players? And kind of the best comparison I could think of is the quarterbacks from the 2018 draft, where it's like you had
Hmm.
Baker, Darnold, and even Rosen was considered very safe. And then you had Lamar and Josh Allen, who were considered very volatile. Obviously, in that scenario, the home runs hit, and really two of the safe guys didn't. Darnold played good last year, but a whole new team. And even Baker, he bounced around after Cleveland, but that was their own screw up. I don't know. From a philosophical standpoint, Ryan, do you kind of believe in, you want to see your team take the safer picks, sometimes, or do you want every pick to kind of be the upside play?
I mean, as far as I mean, I've seen both. From an NFL and NBA perspective, seen both have happened, and there's been some good and there's been some not so good. Where you take the safe guy and he ends up being not so safe, and
Sure.
yeah, you take the guy that's thought tile and he ends up actually being the safer prospect that you picked, and like, oh, well, this guy wasn't a volatile pick. It's just like, I guess, a right situation. You land in the right spot at the right moment. Um, I don't know. I think specifically with this draft and where the Titans are picking number one, it's a very interesting question because I think there's a couple of guys you can say are, I don't know, volatile, but just like big time prospects, and then you got safe guys that are up there. I think a guy like Travis Hunter, Abdul Quest you can throw in. He's got the foot stuff here recently, but you could say like those guys are safe, whereas guys like Cam Ward and Shedeur, a little bit more volatile, a little bit more polarizing. So I think my team right now, as of now, it looks like they're in a position to take the polarizing guy, one the polarizing guy. So I think it's a tough proposition, and this is something teams go through each and every year. It's like, do we want to be safe? And I think if you're I think if you're probably a rebuilding team, I think somebody like a Mason Graham who falls into that safe category, I feel like you can just plug him in there, like, fine with that. He's going to contribute for the next 10 years. Whereas I think if you're somebody like Philly or Kansas City, you take the volatile guys. You take them and like you bet on upside and you bet on your system, especially Philly with what they've done the last couple years.
See, Ryan, that's fascinating to me because I was actually going to suggest the complete opposite. I was going to flip that around, where I think if
Oh,
you're one of these Jacksonville, New England, that kind of a team, what do you have to lose? Take the upside shot because guess what? If you hit on that guy, look at the Bills are kind of a good example, right? Think about Bills pre Josh Allen. Take the swing on Josh Allen when it hits, that's a franchise changer, right? When you hit on these super volatile players, everything can change, Versus if you're a contender, you may not be you're already a really great team, you would do a lot of good by just having another startable player on your team, right? Like when you think about the Chiefs, the Eagles, these teams, which by the way are paying quarterbacks a lot of money. You don't have a lot of money, just go bring in solid starters. You can get some veteran discount if you're the Chiefs specifically, but think about Bills, Ravens, Bengals, everyone else, right? You probably just could really use some really good cost controlled players, and so that's where that's funny you went that way because I was actually going to go the complete opposite end, which is what makes the draft so much fun because right now it really kind of does everybody's a future Hall of Famer, right? Also, everyone's a total bust, they're all these amazing mystery box players, and that's probably what makes the draft so much fun.
Yeah, I will say I think the Jaguars are going to flip the switch here. I think they're probably heading into the opposite way with their new regime. It kind of feels like that because they weren't taking as active big swings in free agency as they usually do. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, what's going on with Jacksonville? They aren't signing this guy to $200 million, but yeah, we kind of talked about this pre-show, and talking about the draft and how we want to go about it this year. What we're going to be doing is we're going to do it differently. We're going to be doing a kind of a consensus mock, going through all these picks. But Matt, before we can get this thing started, you had some questions that you wanted to kind of talk about as before we get into this.
Yeah, so let's start out with one of the more polarizing players of the draft, and we will talk about him more when we go to pick him. But I want to start with Shedeur Sanders, just because I feel like this guy is kind of the biggest talking point, or at least
Yes.
top two talking point, of the draft. He's a kid who I personally have not been blown away by what I've seen. And it's one of those things where it's like quarterbacks get so inflated, and I guess there's a bit of a Jackson Dart conversation to have here too. Let's say Ryan, because we don't know yet how our mock is going to go. We're going to talk about him much more then. Um, how far up do you think Shedeur could go?
I mean, I think two is. I felt like before all these quarterback moves had happened, I felt like okay, two was going to be it was going to be the ceiling, but because of what has happened now, it seems like that is not the case at all. And I mean, that could be I mean, Cleveland could still do that. I don't want to say it, but it might. It feels like Kenny Pickett could be their, guy we want to bring in. So it might be their low cost, young quarterback. They did just bring in Joe Flacco.
Ryan,
Flacco is back.
I saw these headlines going all around, and I love Joe Flacco. I am like number one Joe Flacco fan. If you think Shador's the guy, if you think he's good, there's no way I am letting Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco stop me from drafting him. Now, the follow up question just simply is do I think he's good? Right? That's where the issues can be. So, okay, as high as two is in this range of outcomes, though. I agree. How low do you think Shedeur could go? What's the latest you could see it? The latest I have seen is to the LA Rams at 26. How low do you think he could go?
I think that's a good baseline. I think that's a good baseline right there. I don't think if he does start to fall that far, you also got to take this into consideration. Somebody like Cleveland or New York, say they go and take a Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter at 2 and 3. They see Shedeur falling. They're like, hey, we see him falling. Let's go trade up back in the middle of the first round, around that sweet spot where Arizona, Seattle, Cincinnati, Atlanta are, and I think because if you see the Steelers and they haven't made their move yet, I think the obvious thing would be to go and try to jump them. so
Yep.
they don't go in Sheduer. Um, so I think that would be the other scenario there. But I think, yeah, I think the Rams are probably the floor there for him. I don't think he would get past them if he was there. I think, you know, Sean McVay would probably take him if he's there. You got a guy that's fallen all the way down to you in your laps at 26, and you got your succession plan for Stafford. I think that's yeah, I think that's the floor.
I agree. One thing I think is interesting when you look at this board, and it's just a thing that's a product of the drafts that we have seen. At so if he gets past 9 with New Orleans, 10 Chicago just drafted Caleb Williams. San Fran about to pay Brock Purdy. I think I'm a little bit more of a pessimist than most about that deal getting done, but I cannot imagine them drafting a QB in round one.
No.
1 second, hang on. Oh dear. Yeah, Ryan, you're gonna be cut there. Sorry. I tried to get to the button in time. I could not. Okay. Um. Then at 12, Dallas just paid Dak. Again, I don't see them being a team to take a QB. Miami just paid Tua. Indy just drafted Anthony Richardson. Atlanta just drafted Michael Penix. Arizona just paid Kyler Murray not that long ago. I don't see them doing a QB in the first. Cincy just paid Geno Smith,
Yeah.
Joe Burrow. Seattle just paid Sam Darnold. Tampa just paid Baker Mayfield. Denver just drafted Bo Nix, and then you get to Pittsburgh at 21. So you mentioned that sweet spot. That is a whole run of teams there where in their slot, I don't see any reason they would take Shedeur Sanders. That's where a team could move up, though. But if everyone was locked in, there's a whole range. If he doesn't go at 9, he goes all the way down to 21.
They say, hey, we got the draft capital. Let's go and move up and get our guy. So yeah. So what were some of your other questions you had besides Shedeur?
So my second question is actually about Shedeur Sanders' teammate from college. What is a Travis Hunter? What is this guy, Ryan? Because I gotta tell you, I'm sitting here with some Dynasty Fantasy Football drafts coming up here, and I'm saying to myself, man, if he's a wide receiver, he's the number one wide receiver in this class. And if he's a wide receiver, I feel a whole lot better too about Tet being a wide receiver 2, Burton being wide receiver 3, Abuka being wide receiver 4. I feel a lot better about those guys all being pushed down a slot. But is he a wide receiver? Is he a corner? Is he both? What is this guy, Ryan?
I think it ultimately depends on what these teams view him as. I think there's going to be some differing opinions. Some view him as more of a corner than a wide receiver. I think it's just also like how does your wide receiver and corner rooms look? I mean, you look at Cleveland's rooms at both positions. Right now, is a wide receiver. You got Judy. He did well for you at the end of last season. But other than that, you got Cedric Tillman, who's shown flashes a couple times, but you don't have anybody else there. You have Denzel Ward at corner. You have Martin Emerson on the other side. So I think they would use him as a wide receiver. Now I mean this isn't this. I don't think just taking a look at all the top 4 teams that could take him. I think there's a very clear need at wide receiver for a lot of them, more
Yeah.
so than corner. I think Cleveland, you can maybe argue that they could use him at corner a little bit more. I think the Giants, you pair him with Malik Neighbors, and I mean, you want to talk about some adding explosiveness along with Malik Neighbors?
Yep.
That's terrifying. And then with the moves the Patriots made, adding Carlton Davis, you got Christian Gonzalez. You would play him at wide receiver, and then in passing down packages or in packages where you want him on the field, you would put him at corner, but he would strictly be a wide receiver for the Patriots. So I think it ultimately depends on what team that drafts him, what they see him as. Uh, I think for a lot of them, I think they view him as a wide receiver with how their rooms have kind of shaken out. This guy can be a wide receiver 1. This guy, man, just watching some of his highlights, the body control, his ability to contort and being able to have the wherewithal to make some of these plays are nuts. But he's also just as good as a corner. So I mean, I think he's probably going to be playing more wide receiver at the next level, just based off how the top four looks. Because I mean, he's not making it past four. I don't think he's not making it to Jacksonville.
I agree.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. If for if some reason Shedeur goes top three, and if Abdul Carter goes ahead of him, the Patriots, yes, they're gonna need a tackle, but I don't think you can pass him. You can't pass a guy like him, a guy that's a true blue chip guy in this draft when there are so few of them in this draft.
My personal opinion is he's a starting wide receiver. And then, on defense, we have these pass rush specialists on the defensive line, right? Think
Yeah,
about these like veteran guys. I think in a similar way, he is a pass coverage specialist. I do not want him on the field on first or second downs. On defense. I think he is a starter at wide receiver and a near full snap play. Even the starting wide receivers, if you're not a mega star, you rotate in a little bit, right? Jaden Reed, he's on the field every time for Green Bay. I think you see
right.
that kind of a snap allocation for Travis Hunter as a wide receiver. And then I think as a corner, you see him be a third down specialist on, third and seven or more, and you say, okay, you're covering this guy, that's your deal. I don't want him to be tackling more than he has to be. I don't want him to be getting hit by tight ends who are blocking more than he has to be. I think that is how I would personally try to deploy him. Ryan, one last question I have for you before we dive into the mock draft. And this is because running backs get no love, right? Running backs get, that they're so important, it feels like in so many ways, even though, their values diminish, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the NFL draft, we're lucky if we talk about two guys if we're doing a mock draft. And this year's kind of the same. Although, Ryan, this year's rookie running back class is being promoted and hyped out of this world. Like, we think back to the 2017 NFL draft. That was your one with like Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara. I'm blanking on everybody else, but there was like I think six starting running backs out of that class though. This one's got a similar thing, Ryan. So I want to go. We're gonna skip Jeanty because we're gonna talk about him later for sure. We will most likely talk Omarion Hampton, so maybe we skip
Hmm.
him also. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, teammates at the Ohio State. Ryan, am I right that these are basically Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery?
I could see that play out. I think both are really good. But Judkins had so much success at the SEC level at Ole Miss, so you got that with Jahmyr Gibbs and Travion Henderson, 4-year starter. I think. Yeah, I think you can make the case. I mean, Henderson, I think, is probably a little bit more explosive than Judkins, and Judkins is more of a guy that fits a Montgomery role. But yeah, I think those two are right there. I also think, I mean, you get those other guys. I think Caleb Johnson,
Yep, I was gonna get there
Scatterboo,
next.
um, yeah.
Because Ryan, I glowed for a moment because I thought you were about to say that Trayvon Henderson is more explosive than Jahmyr Gibbs, and I was about to just
No,
shoot
no.
the moon. um, let's
Oh
talk
no.
Caleb
Uh-uh.
Johnson. Let's talk Caleb Johnson real quick because he's probably going to be a second round pick. Also, give me your 30-second elevator pitch on Caleb Johnson.
I mean, he's a guy that went to Iowa. Is a workhorse type of guy. I mean, what else do they do at Iowa? I mean, Matt, even this as somebody that doesn't watch college football. What does Iowa do? They don't throw the ball. What is that? They're stuck in the 1990s or something. You know, but no, this guy's an excellent runner. He can absolutely break one. I think if you're a team looking for a guy that can be that can walk right in and carry a workload, I think he can be that. He's proven that at Iowa, and now you just need a good offensive line. Iowa's usually got those big boys up front, playing Big Ten ball. I think a lot of teams like him. I think he's probably going to go in that second round, but I kind of get the feeling that after Hampton and Jeanty, I feel like it's Judkins and Henderson, and then Caleb Johnson is probably that RB5 when it comes to that group.
One more guy I want to touch on real quick, and that's Cam Scatabo out of Arizona State. Ryan, I'm trying to put my finger on what I think he is. Um, I feel like he's kind of almost a fullback in a way because he's a big dude and he's not that fast. He's really good though, and he's also surprisingly a good pass catcher. He reminds me of like Mark Ingram a little bit. What do you say?
I mean, this guy. I'll tell you what, Matt. This guy is tough to bring down. Like I can't remember which college football playoff game it was. I think it was probably the semis when they had the bye. But like he could not get going. Then all of a sudden, like boom, they could not stop him for a while. Like he is a hoss to bring down. He's not the biggest guy. This guy's just a physical runner. He welcomes that type of contact. So I think if you're a team that likes that physicality from your running game and our physical team, he's going to fit right in, and you're going to love him from the second he's. This guy, he's not going to give up. You know, he's going to take about 5, 6 guys with him. It might be for about 4 yards, but it's going to be it's going to be the most impressive 4 yards that you'll see.
I'm gonna make a comparison here, Ryan, and this is going to feel bad because of the fact that dude only had one season of relevance, but that one season was so good it got him on the cover of Madden. Cam Scatabo is Peyton Hillis.
I knew you were going there. Oh man,
So,
talking about a blast from the
and let me read
past.
you 2010, that season for Peyton Hillis. 270 carries. Holy cow, you talk about being able to eat a workload. 270 carries for 1,177 yards. So 4.4 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns, a red zone dominator. By the way, he also caught 61 passes that year. And that is a part of Cam Scadabo's game. And 477 yards receiving, so not too shabby there either. That is who I see when I see Cam Scadabo. I see that one season out of Peyton Hillis. And I don't know if we get that season out of Cam Scadabo or not. Maybe like Peyton Hillis, it takes a couple of years. It's one amazing season and then he just disappears again. Maybe that's how it goes for Cam Scadabo, but that's who I see when I see Cam Scadabo.